Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs, where we're still practicing our social distances. I'm Brian Michael, and with me we have our special guest. You're still special, Brian, but you've been a
Thanks.
guest that we've had many times, our Sundance correspondent, Brian Hart.
Yes, thank you for having me again.
It's always we always look forward to this episode every year, mainly because I get to sit and nod, and then
Yeah.
also because there's all these great films that you got to see at Sundance. And of course, obviously, because of everything that's going on in the world, we're a little behind the times right now. But we figured, hey, we still got to get it out there because, well, the movies are all on pause. Eventually, we will get back to them, I hope.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to hear all that you had to see and wanted to talk about from Sundance. So let her go.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's wild because it seems like, Sundance was in January, end of January. It seems like 8 years ago with everything happening around us. And will we be able to see these movies? I hope so.
Well, there's lots of online and streaming stuff, so we're still getting some movies,
We are getting some movies, but the good news is all of these movies are made, so they should be released as soon as theaters. There will be a clamoring for good film. So hopefully these are some, in fact, one of them was supposed to be, I think, early March or early April, I think, at the cinema. And of course that didn't happen. So hopefully it will be soon.
Good.
So should I just go for it?
Yeah, let's see what's the first one you got.
So I'm going to go right off the bat this time and go with my favorite film of Sundance. This year, I saw, I think, 28 films. So a decent year, especially since I was very sick, the sickest I've ever been at Sundance. And I'm not getting any younger, so it's harder every year. But I managed to see 28. This was number one by far. It is called Minari. It is directed by Lee Isaac Chung. And it's a Korean film, and it's about a Korean family that moves to a farm in Arkansas in the 1980s. And it stars Steven Yeun, who's very famous from Walking Dead. So definitely an actor you've seen before. And he this isn't a spoiler because it's in the first scene, he kind of dupes his wife a little bit. He tells them that they're going to America and they're going to live this life and maybe have a garden. And he ends up buying, 5-10 acres in Arkansas because he wants to be a farmer, and she's not really excited. And their two darling kids are very young and they're not super excited to become farmers either. And it stars his mother-in-law, who ends up coming to live with them. Yoon Jun Yoon, I want to say her name is. I'm probably messing that up horribly, but she is fantastic. She's a huge star in Korea. In fact, when she went to some of the restaurants after the film, people would just give her a standing ovation, and she is excellent. She steals every scene, along with the little boy who plays his son, Alan S. Kim. Both of those two, when they're together, they're amazing. You can't take your eyes off of them. When they're by themselves, they steal every scene. And we're talking, Steven's a pretty good actor. The whole film, super great. I really, really loved it. It actually won the Audience Award and the Critics Award. So that doesn't happen very often where they both agree. Usually it's one end of the spectrum or the other. But this time it was unanimous. And it won everything.
Yeah, and so did you say it was Korean or Vietnamese?
Korean.
It's Korean, yeah. So the Korean cinema right now is really taking off.
It's on fire.
It's great to see that coming to the forefront. This is the director who did Lucky Life and Abigail Harm. I know I haven't seen either one of those. I'm going to say that a lot this episode, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
But that's the great thing about Sundance is that a lot of maybe there's semi-established or established or unestablished filmmakers that you get to discover and find out along the way.
Yeah, and the Korean film is definitely on fire, but this one isn't quite as dark and twisted as some, which are some of my favorite films. Korean films especially, gosh, they're so good. But this one's a drama. It is a serious drama, and it's definitely has some emotional moments, but it has a lot of funny moments. It has every emotion possible, and just very powerful. They're really knocking it out of the park, and this is great, which is what is great when more and more, once another one hits and it becomes really popular, we're going to see more cinema coming out of Korea, which I'm very excited for.
Yeah, excellent. And as Jung Ho said, you know, if we can just take the hurdle of getting over the 1-inch subtitles, we'll discover some great films. So always nice to see great foreign films.
Absolutely.
What's next?
And this is back and forth too, Korean and English. They do have some English in there.
Does it have bad 80s fashion? Because, you know, I got to have that in the 80s film.
You know, it wasn't too bad. It was a little bit universal.
Okay.
They're farmers, you know, so that's kind of an ageless fashion. Jeans and the plaid button up.
Yeah.
So, all right. So my next film was probably my second favorite, but maybe the most powerful, the one that impacted me the most, that made me want to change behavior and my extracurricular activities. It's a documentary called The Social Dilemma. It's directed by Jeff Orlowski. He did the Chasing series, Chasing Ice and Chasing Amy. Chasing Coral. That's the other Chasing. Sorry, trying to be fun. Which are very environmental, you know, very good films nominated for Academy Award. And he's really an up and coming director in the documentary field. And this film is not so blatantly climate change, but it's social dilemma. So it's the effects of social media of all forms. So if we're talking about the big ones, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of the rest. And, you know, I think everybody knows that there's some side effects of using social media and things that it can do to you. But this really painted a dark, scary picture. And I'm pretty active in trying to be aware of what's going on and what they're doing. And there were things that really surprised me and punched me in the stomach and made me really scared and think about where this is leading. It talked to a lot. It's a part talking head. And this was really interesting for a documentary. They had the typical talking head portion of the film, but then they did this like dramatization of a family at their home using social media and the effects of it kind of coinciding with the talking heads. And at first it kind of bothered me. The acting was a little iffy, but after a while, I don't know if the acting got better or I just got used to it, but it worked okay. I don't know if I loved it, but it worked. But the talking heads were still the most important and powerful parts. These were a lot of ex-CEOs or at least higher ups in all of those different companies, in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all of the others, and that have now kind of defunct because they have this moral dilemma of what's happening. And now they've started nonprofits and they're doing things to try to get this going in a little bit better of a direction. They don't want to stop social media, but they do want to have a little bit more of a moral and just a better experience overall. So very eye-opening.
Yeah, especially now in today's world, since we're depending on a lot of social media itself, and there's so many security questions or, just the dilemmas of something like that.
Yeah, the scariest part for me, and this is semi-spoiler alert, so if you don't want to hear it, you can skip ahead a few seconds, but they talked about the repercussions, and he said that the first thing that will happen is we'll have another civil war, but that's short term. And the second scariest thing would be the end of democracy all over the world. And that was like his... Wow. That's what's going to happen for sure if we don't fix this immediately. So just like climate change, very serious, very scary. And then you hear about California wanting to slip away. Texas has talked about being their own entity. So it's not so far-fetched. A lot of people think that's crazy, but they only have to change people's influence 1%. But if you multiply that between everybody in the United States or the world, that's a dramatic shift in the way that we communicate and have our beliefs and how it pushes us further in the divide.
We certainly have seen on social media as people being able to express themselves political, and that's causing a lot of division within communities and families.
Yeah.
And so I could certainly see that. I mean, there's lots of people you're talking about, well, I just unfriended so-and-so, and we all kind of create our own bubble as well. And so,
Right, which
yeah, I
isn't
could totally,
healthy either. I
it's
mean, bubbles
terrifying.
aren't great either. You know, you need dialogue, but
Yeah.
it's like you can't have it anymore because it's so divided, and that's even scarier than being in your own bubble. You know, and
Ouch.
I'm conflicted with that all the time. So
Jeez, that
yeah,
sounds like one to really watch for. And also, I know I'll need to watch something right afterwards because
yeah, for
that's
sure.
going to be a pretty heavy one on you. Oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely
it's
sounds like one to look
yeah, like most of my films, my recommended films, they're all pretty heavy. So we'll go
for.
from the social dilemma to Feels Good Man, which is you know, a little neo-Nazism thrown in here. It's a documentary about uh, a graphic artist from San Francisco who started Pepe Le Frog when he was
Mhm.
in high school, and he was this very typical kind of stoner, uh, carefree, you know, guy, and he just loved doodling this little frog. And in one of the comics, he was going to the bathroom, and his friend walked in on him on accident, and he had his pants down to his ankles, and the guy was like, "Whoa!" and like left. And then they talked about it later, and he's like, "What was the deal with that? You know, why'd you have your pants around your ankles?" And he's like, "Feels good, man." And so this became a catchphrase. This became a catchphrase in bodybuilding forums of all places. That's how it started. And
Huh.
I just had a big pump workout. Feels good, man. And
Wow.
this guy, Matthew's friend, started saying, you know, I'm seeing this pop up in a lot of bodybuilding forums. You might want to protect yourself, you know, get it copyrighted, stop this from happening. He's like, nah, that's not my style, man. I'm just, you know, I'm this cool, carefree artist and love for all. And then all of a sudden, 4chan got a hold of it, and white supremacists, and it became a hate symbol. It became a registered hate symbol. They basically took it away from him, and he could never use it again. He couldn't, you know, it became this thing of mass, like, disgusting behavior. And it shows his journey from the beginning to the middle and to where he tried to take control, take it back, and they basically laughed at him and said, "It's ours now, you know, get out of here, you loser." And but then there are, and I won't go into spoilers, there are some things that have changed just recently that were a little more inspiring, so you didn't want to just jump off a bridge at the end of this movie. And of course, he was there, all the filmmakers, and he was there. He got up on stage. I was in the front row. He got up on stage. He just started crying because he saw it. I mean, I can't imagine seeing your life's work and how it spiraled into such an evil entity, and then trying to get it back, and all of these things, that journey, and then watching it again on screen happen in front of you. Very, very emotional, but he seemed to be in a better place than he was throughout his journey. But a fascinating story. I knew a very little bit about it. I think I saw something on Vox, maybe an article, but not the details that this movie goes into, obviously. Really, really good film.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. How heartbreaking. Gosh.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, just, you know, taking something that you've grown up with, that you created, and having it turn into a monster like that. I can't even relate
Yeah.
how that would be. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
one thing to have it taken over by some corporate that uses it for some slogan for some product.
right.
It's another thing to have that happen. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah. And he
Wow.
went to the wherever it was registered as a hate symbol. You know, he went there and said, "This is mine. Like, I need it off the register, and I'm trying to get it back." And they're like, "No, it's still a hate symbol. It always will be a hate symbol for quite a while." You know, they're like, they denied his appeal. It was wild. So he doesn't even own it hardly right now. Very crazy.
Dang. That is crazy.
Okay, let's take a little bit of a divergence, but I'm going to go to another drama at least. This is called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. This was the movie that was supposed to play at Salem Cinema early April. It's just, you know, a cheery drama about a kind of lonely, stoic teenage girl who works at a grocery store, which I can relate to since I worked many years at Ross here in Salem. And but then she gets pregnant, unintentionally pregnant. She also, she gets some sexual harassment and, the daily life of a young teenage girl. But she goes with her cousin on this road trip. They live somewhere in New York. They have to go to an abortion clinic, and it's kind of their journey. And she's a little bit, she gets tested. She goes to the first clinic, and she's further along than they thought, and further along than she's allowed to have an abortion there. So she has to go into the city. So she takes another subway, and it's a secret trip. They don't tell their parents, and they are alone. It's just two teenage girls in the big city, kind of not where they're supposed to be. And it's something, I have no frame of reference in this world at all. But so I don't know how accurate it could have been, but it seemed very real, very just simple and very emotional. They meet some boys along the way, and they have a few, I don't want to say adventures, but they certainly have some experiences, good and bad, that you would experience probably in New York City on your own as a teenager. They have no money. They can barely pay, she pools all the money she has to try to pay for this. They don't have anywhere to stay, anywhere to get there, no way to get back. It's a wild ride, but very, very good. And I talked to a lot of my female friends to make sure to get a little bit of a frame of reference, to make sure I wasn't just a white male that's out of touch that watched this film. And they said that they all agreed that it was very good and moving and pretty accurate in that world. So
when you talk about the social divide that we have on social media, that's certainly one of those, the big dividers. And I'm sure that there's people who watch our show, and I respect everybody's opinions, that if they're watching this, that immediately are like, no. And that's fine. But there are people out there that a little, that aren't afraid of the topic or seeing a film about that topic, because that is a tough topic to see a film about it. And there are, a lot of really amazing and powerful movies that are about this certain subject. This movie is actually available online, because I looked that up on Just Watch. Yeah, you can pay for it. It always makes me, it kind of befuddles me that some people are like, you can rent these new movies and it's $20. That's ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, but how many people are you going to sit and watch it with? If it's two, then it's $10 a piece, and that's pretty much what you paid for at the movies. The money is going to independent theater. $20 is what you pay. Yeah, exactly. So, then again, I was thinking like, but if you get it for 48 hours, can someone else watch it? Then you can pass it around. Because we all like to share social media passwords and such. But so this movie is available out there. I have heard a lot about this movie. We were looking forward to it being in our local cinema, but because of everything being turned upside down, we have to wait a little bit longer, or you can rent it online.
Yeah, I hope that it eventually gets to the cinema, because I will want to watch it with friends too. It's one of those really good movies, and they talk about, they already tackled a tough subject with just abortion in general, but her being underage, her being a female, being alone, keeping it from her parents, late stage. I mean, they were not afraid to go places, which is good. That's what I love about good film, is it can take you somewhere that maybe you don't want to experience in real life, but you can experience these things and get a different perspective. So,
okay, and then your next film, Brian?
Yeah, so the last film that I want to talk about in detail is Us Kids, and I thought this was U.S. Kids for a long time, but it's Us Kids. It's a documentary directed by Kim A. Snyder. She did Newtown. She did the one where the school shooting with the children, with the very young children, and this is a documentary about the Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and that school shooting, and kind of these kid activists that rose up from this horrible tragedy. And it talks about it leaves off right when all that happened, and then talks about what they've been doing since, which I always thought was very interesting. I was already admired these kids. It's hard to find the right adjective because these kids have been through so much, but the way that they took it and really kind of made it their own, started doing activism things, and leading this charge, but then they kind of disappeared for a while, like most school shootings do, unfortunately. But it was cool. They were all there. So Emma Gonzalez, all the kids were there. David Hogue, Jacqueline Corin, Samantha Fuentes. They were all there. They talked afterwards. And again, this is kind of the luckiest part about being at Sundance for me, is listening to them afterwards talk about, they saw it for the first time and with their friends, and they were hooting and hollering during the film. And but what they've been up to in the sense that in the year is they have been quiet, but intentionally quiet, because for the last year they've been strategizing for the election. And so they've been getting organized and getting a plan of action, and they're going to visit swing states. And these kids are 10 times smarter than I will ever be. And they've just barely graduated high school, and some of them still are in high school. They're so inspiring and amazing. But it's another film. Yeah, it's going to have a divide of fans and people that want to take it down, but it's another film that really people need to see. These are people that lived it, and they're not perfect every day. They have really bad days, and that is also really powerful to see. So very, very much worth checking out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an incredible subject. And yeah, that is kind of interesting because of the shootings that people kind of disappear, that actually is part of the strategy and what they're going to be willing to do, that'll be exciting to see. It's always good to see, young people involved in action, especially when it's affecting them, and a lot of them didn't have a voice theoretically because they were underage in terms of voting. Right. And so, and that's the next wave, that will be. A lot of them are 18. A lot of them live in Florida, which is a swing state for sure.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But they've gathered with other activists around other states and created this nonprofit, and they're just doing amazing things all over the board, and it's really inspiring to see for sure. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds incredible. Now, I know that because of the 28 films, man, that is a lot of movies. Because I've done them before the festival thing, and boy, you can watch 3 or 4 movies is great, but sitting still in the dark room, and sometimes that is hard to stay awake. So what are some of the other films that you saw that were interesting that you're kind of looking forward to coming out?
Yeah, I have some honorable mentions for sure that I'll rapid fire here, because this was a really good year. There were a lot of really good films. And so that was exciting. There's been some years where it's been a little light, but there's so many that I would love to talk about. There's one called The Father, starring Anthony Hopkins. He's talking about going through Alzheimer's. If he doesn't get an Academy Award, at least a nomination for this, I would be very surprised. He's absolutely amazing. There's another one called Possessor that would be like if you took Texas Chainsaw Massacre and mixed it with Inception. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, it's wild and really, really good. Kind of good. I don't know. It's crazy. There's a 40-year-old version, which is up-and-coming young Black female director. Very good film. I love it. I hope she makes more. She's super great. I sat behind her in a different film. Super nice. Great. I hope. I think there was over 50% female directors this year. I know that was kind of the overall theme. Sundance has really been trying to mix that in, people of color and women in general. So that was really great to see. And it really showed. A lot of these films are directed by amazing women. Another one was Miss Juneteenth was very good. The Fight was another documentary, really, really powerful. A lot of really, really good films this year.
Oh, man. Now, I have to ask every year, how many years now has it been?
This is the 18th year. I lost track of my count. Math's very hard. And I skipped a year, so all bets were off. But I believe this was my 18th year. I might have said that last year, too. I might say it next year. Who knows?
No, but that's impressive.
You get a lot of perks when you hit the 20-year mark. You get 10 free films that you can see no matter what. You get a hard ticket. You get some other little perks. So, I'm in for at least 2 more years.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And then do you get to visit with Robert Redford or a Marvel studio movie?
He's pretty much right. Yeah. A little stand-in for a little film. Now, he's pretty removed from the festival now. He was there, you know, and he would talk a little bit. And even John Cooper stepped down. This was his last year, and that's too bad because I love John. But another woman of color took his place, which is always good. So they're going in the right direction for sure. I think they'll keep the cutting edge on getting diversity in there. So it's really good to see that they're very aware of that kind of stuff, and they're working really hard. Because Sundance, you know, being the biggest or the most influential in the United States, kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. But they're, you know, they are big, and there's things that come with that. But they're trying to do the best they can for sure. So.
Yeah, with success you get bigger, and then the bigger you are, the bigger the target you are, and so you get under a lot of scrutiny and stuff. But a lot of times then you can also make those changes and be the forefront of those, and so that's always good and really positive to see. When you look at cans or cons, you know, sometimes it's just kind of a popularity contest. Sometimes you know, a lot of the films that kind of have been shown there a lot of times, but with this one, you know, Sundance is still nice to see some really special films that hopefully we'll see the light of day and continue to inspire those filmmakers that are up and coming. So as always, Brian, we want to thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I know that Angela is watching. Angela, I miss you, and
we miss
hope
you,
to
Angela.
see you soon. Yeah, I want to give her a big hug and touch her face.
Oh,
really
gosh.
bad.
She just turned it off.
But as always, you know, we want to thank the viewers out there. We want to thank our hardworking crew, even though we've got Brad, which is you know, such a blessing. But all of our crew that are at home, we miss you. We hope to see you soon. Our amazing sponsors, please check them out. And if you can find films, there's a lot of ways to find films out there, guys, and get real creative to find the ones that are really tough to find, and continue to enjoy those. So as always, have a great day and great movies. Thanks for watching.